Hi, so we're going to talk about accessing objects. So let's see an example here. Let's assume we have an object, my object, this way. And remember we use the curly brackets. And now we need to specify our properties of the object. So we'll say the first property is going to be first name, something like this. So the first name, I'm going to call that my name, Ifeanyi. And then we have the second property, and it's going to be the last name, something like that. And that will be my last name. So now we have this object created, as we can see here, and we need to access the values of the first property, that's first name, and the second property, that's the last name. So to do that, we just simply need to specify the name of the object, that's my object, and we'll use the dot notation and choose the first name for the first name. So we're going to put this in a variable. So let first name, and we'll just put let my first name be that, and we'll put the second variable, let that's my last name, something like that, will now be equals to this. So we use the last name here, and now we're going to log this out on the console. So console .log, and we'll take first name value and also last name value. And if we save that, now we have Ifeanyi Omeata. So now we can see that we were able to get the first name from the property, that's the first name property of the object, my object, and we were able to access the value of that property first name using the dot notation, and we also did that for the last name, and we saved them in the variables, and now we were able to print them out. So let's see another way to access values from the objects, and let's just create a new object, and we'll just say let my object. So now if we save that, we can notice here that these two were not auto corrected, but the last one, which is just one string or one word, was auto corrected. That's the quotes were removed from it. So we're going to see how this affects accessing objects with the dot notation. So assuming we want to get the value, say the last item, that's this. So what we'll do is we'll say my object, so my object, no space, and we need to console log that. So console.log that way, and by the time we save this, what do we have? ngn, we have the value here. But when we want to call the first property, that's the space name, and want to call the value of that, we can't have spaces between our values when we are calling them. For example, if you take this and you put it here, now it's going to give an error because we can't have spaces here. So a better way to make this, to access this, is to use the brackets notation, the bracket form. So we'll just use the square brackets that way, and we will now specify that is a string name, and we can see we just took that into the square bracket, and we have the object just by the side of the square bracket. By the time we save that, and now we have Mike, and if we do that for more space that way and we save it, now we have Spike. So that's the way to access properties of objects that have space between them. So another instance is if, for example, we have a new variable and we'll call this additional space, something like this, and we want to give the value no space to additional space. So we just say no space that way. And now we want to access the value of the property no space in my object using additional space. So how do we do that here? If we use the dot notation just that way, like dot additional space, and we say since additional space equals to no space, and if we do it that way and we save, what do we get? Undefined, because it's looking for this as an object, and we know it's not. So it's not going to look for the value. Like if you take this value, for example, and put it there and save, now you have ngn. So we also use the square bracket form to access variables that represent the actual properties. So in this case, we can just take this additional space, which is indeed the variable for, or the container for the no space, and if we save that, now we get ngn. So what if we take this space name and put it here, and we save that, now we have Mike. So that's basically the two ways to access objects. That's the object values using the dot notation, or we can use the square brackets just this way. So let's do the task and see if we can answer that. So the first one says, read in the property values of test object using dot notation. Set the variable heart value equal to the object's property heart, and set the variable shirt value equals to the object's property shirt. So let's just open that. So let's take the value of the variable heart value, and we're going to assign that. So say let heart value be assigned to the object, so test object, and we'll access the property that is heart that way, and then we'll also have a new variable for shirt value, and we'll do the same thing, test object, then we'll access the value for shirt, the property shirt. And let's log this out, so console.log, and we have heart value, which I'll put there, and shirt value, which I'll also put there, and let's save. Now we have ball cap and jersey, just what we have here. So that one is solved. And number 2, it says read the values of the properties and entry and the drink of test object using bracket notation, and assign them to entry value and drink value respectively. So this time we'll be using the bracket notation. So we'll create the variables let, and we use entry value, and we want the object, test object, but because there is a space here in between, we can't use the dot notation, so we'll use the bracket notation, and we'll get this, oops, and we'll get this in here, and we'll do the same. So let that for drink value equals to, and we'll do the same. Why? Because the drink is also has a space in between that. So we'll just copy that and save that. So let's log this out. So entry value, and we'll have that for drink value, and save. And now we have hamburger and water, just hamburger for entry value and water for drink value. So we've successfully been able to show you how to access object values from an object.